Hello, I'm Richard Murphy, and I want to talk about something that really irritates me, and that is the demand that we answer the question, how are we going to pay for the COVID crisis? Why does this irritate me? Because we have already paid for it. There is nothing owing to anyone. How do I know? Because the bills have been settled. How do I know they've been settled? Because the government has paid them. What have they paid them with? With money created by the Bank of England, which was used to buy government bonds, which bonds were issued by the Treasury simultaneously with their repurchase, in effect, to fund the deficits that were required to ensure the government could continue to provide its services despite the collapse in tax revenues that has happened in the current tax year, 2020-21. How many bonds have been issued? Roughly £300 billion worth at this moment. How many bonds have been repurchased by the Bank of England on behalf of the Treasury? Roughly £300 billion worth at this moment. What is the consequence of that repurchase? That the Bank of England has injected roughly £300 billion worth of new money into the economy, which is now sitting on what are called the central bank and reserve accounts that the clearing banks of the UK keep with the Bank of England, but with that money then flowing onwards through the financial system, either into savings, and savings have risen by roughly £300 billion this year, in such things as stocks, shares and other things, or in cash. Now, that is the end of it. There is no further bill to pay, nor do we have to sell back those gilts into the market, because to do so would require a significant increase in the interest rate paid upon all gilts and therefore on mortgages and other loans, and people can't afford to pay those, so the government does not wish that interest rate to rise. And I promise you, because of the political risk of interest rates actually rising right now, when so many households are vulnerable to debt, the government will not be taking that risk. They will not be sending those bonds back into the market and trying to reclaim the money they've injected into the economy. Nor would they want to do that for another reason. £200 billion of the money injected into the economy in the last year basically went in very rapidly last March, and it was spent into the economy by the government by repurchasing gilts for one absolutely essential reason, and that was to provide the liquidity that markets needed last March when they looked as though there might be a financial crunch because of the onset of COVID-19 and a recurrence of the 2008 crisis looked to be on the cards. The banks needed this liquidity and to hold this amount of money with the Bank of England to ensure that they could settle all the claims upon them as they fell due, and the government provided it to prevent a financial meltdown. Withdrawing it would potentially create that risk of that meltdown, and no government, including the current government, would want to take that risk, not now or ever. And so for that reason, this money is not going to be cancelled. And as a consequence, if QE is not going to be reversed, there is indisputably a truth. And that truth is that the COVID crisis has been paid for with this new money that the government has created. There is no new debt. The debt that has been issued has been repurchased by the government using money created by the Bank of England that is now in the economy at large and which it needs to operate, and we do not need to unwind that situation. So why do we keep talking about the need to repay the debt? Well, there are two reasons for that. First of all, because the government insists that the gilts that it has issued are still in existence, even though they have been repurchased by itself, which is absurd. That's like saying, well, I've got a mortgage on my house, but I own the mortgage on my house and I have to repay the mortgage to myself, and it's really onerous. And the interest on it is such a burden. It's like moving money out of my right pocket and putting it into my left pocket. It's so tedious to do. But, that's exactly what the government is doing with regard to these gilts. they don't actually exist in the sense they have no remaining economic substance. The government has cancelled them for all practical purposes by repurchasing them. So how can we have to repay what the government has already effectively repaid by repurchasing them from the market already? We can't buy them back twice. So what is the suggestion being made? I really don't know. But the government likes to keep that suggestion that there is this debt still in place for one long-running reason, which started in 2009 when quantitative easing first began. And that is to make us think that the government cannot print money at will to solve problems that exist in society. The government, of course, in 2010, which has dominated the era of quantitative easing, has been conservative-led throughout. And they want people to think that the government is constrained in the activities that it can undertake, and that of course led to the whole policy of austerity. And austerity was deliberate, unnecessary and callous because it did, for example, lead to excess deaths in the NHS because of resources not supplied that could have been paid for very easily, but the government chose not to deliver. And the government did that because it wanted to say the state cannot meet people's needs when very clearly it can, and the resources to do so can be created at will, as has been seen in the last year when the government has done this to meet the coronavirus crisis and all the costs that went with it by paying for it with funding that has effectively been created by the Bank of England on its behalf. So there is a narrative kept in place for deliberate political reasons to say you can't have what you want because the government does not want to give it to you because it does not want to create the money that makes your better life possible. That is literally what is going on. And do I find that deeply annoying? As annoying as the suggestion that we now need to repay something which does not exist? Yes. Because a better world is possible if we understand that the government can create money to meet social need. Yes, there are problems to create because some of this money does fuel greater wealth inequality, and we'll have to tackle that through the tax system. But overall, the social gains massively outweigh the social costs. But the government wants to deny this and perpetuates a lie through the Office for National Statistics that there is debt in existence which is simply not there. And that is why we end up with this ridiculous question being asked, which is, how are we going to pay for the coronavirus crisis when the answer is, we have already paid for it. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in what I've been saying in this video, please subscribe. There is a button below the viewing screen. If you're interested in what I have to say on Twitter, I'm at Richard J. Murphy on that medium. If you want to look at my blog, that's taxresearch.org.uk, and we have a Facebook page as well, Richard J. Murphy. So one of those things will get you more information on what this video series is about, and I hope I'll see you again soon.